I still don't have comparison.
Test, 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 test. I'm happy. More is better. Oh. You ready? Okay, good evening, everyone. Mayor Peckford is in conference today and is unable to join us in person, and I'm happy to fill in as chair. I'll now call the meeting to order at 6:31. And we'll start off with the land acknowledgement. Who would like to read the land acknowledgement? Okay, Councillor Starkey, thank you.
The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous-informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to read some brief remarks prepared by staff, and thank you to staff for preparing me tonight. I've already warned them that I often, can we close the door up there? Thank you. Go off script and wander into the wilderness, but I'll try and stick to the script. First, a heartfelt thank you to all who helped mark Remembrance Day yesterday and Indigenous Veterans Day across North Grenville in recent days. To our veterans, Indigenous veterans, and their families, thank you. To the Legion and volunteers, ceremony organizers, wreath layers, faith leaders, first responders, cadets, Cubs, committees, and organizations, your efforts ensured our community paused, reflected, and remembered. On Monday, we celebrated a major milestone with the official opening of the new southern span of County Road 43 Bridge. This project has been years in the making, and we appreciate the teamwork among the counties, the province, the federal government, and our municipal staff and contractors. Thank you to our residents and businesses for your patience during construction as we continue to improve safety and capacity along this corridor. Looking ahead, tomorrow kicks off Transgender Awareness Week, and we'll start by raising the flag at the Municipal Centre at 11 a.m. All are welcome as we affirm inclusion and respect for our transgender neighbors. This Friday at 6 p.m., the BIA hosts the Christmas tree lighting downtown. This is the second year making this a community event. Please come support downtown and help light up the season. Speaking of lighting up the season, on Saturday at 4:30 p.m., the big guy himself is slated to arrive at the Rotary Santa Claus Parade with the theme of Unite Up the Light for Christmas. Bring your family your best holiday cheer and try some cocoa or even a bowl of chili from one of the folks along the route. Just please don't let Santa see you cut in the hot chocolate line. He's keeping a list. And finally, there are officially too many craft fairs and holiday markets to list tonight. So please check the community calendar for all the details and plan to support our amazing local makers and businesses. And now we'll move on to tonight's agenda. Look for someone to, we look for the adoption of the agenda. I'll look for someone to move and second adoption of the agenda. Thank you, Councillor O'Sullivan and Councillor Stracher-Yan, that the agenda for November 12th, 2025 be approved as presented. All in favor? And that's carried. Next, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move on. There are no deputations or proclamations this evening. And next, we get to the consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull an item from the consent agenda? Councillor O'Sullivan, there's only one item on the consent agenda. You want to pull it? Okay. Okay. So that would be item G1. Okay. So we'll need a mover and a seconder to pull that. So I assume you move that, Councillor O'Sullivan. Anyone second? Councillor Stracher-Yan. Thank you. I'll now call the vote to remove G1. All in favor? That's passed. Okay. We will get to that when we get to G, or are we there already, Clerk? Okay. So let me read the motion that Council recommends the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville to approve a one-year extension. Is that G1? Sorry. Okay. A one-year extension of Phase 5 of the Equinell subdivision draft plan conditions. So we've moved and seconded removal from the consent agenda, and now we're, did you want to start the discussion, Councillor O'Sullivan? Or should we move and second that, I guess, to get it on the table? Okay, so you're moving adoption of that recommendation, and we'll need a seconder. Councillor Wilson. Okay, so now we can have the discussion.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to, I guess it would be to Director Martin. I just wanted some clarification. There were a couple things that I was unsure about. First of all, it said 85 homes, but I'm not sure if it's 85 in total or if there were 85 single detached, 3 2-unit semi-detached, for a total of 6 units, 22 one-story towns for 22, 57 two-story towns, and 1 block for 2 to 3 singles, which could add up to 173 in total. So I just wanted to clarify, is it 85 or is it up to 173 units?
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Sullivan. So that's just breaking down the different types of housing units. So there's 173 housing units in Phase 5 in total, but we just break down how many were singles, semis, and townhouse units.
Okay, thank you. So it is 173 total. And I also wasn't exactly sure where the location of Phase 5 is because it referred to A, B, and C. And does it go along Settlers Trail in any way? Because there were some concerns from a member of the Health, Wellness, Fitness, Active Transportation Committee regarding tree removal along Settlers Trail and whether or not there would be any replacement of such trees that have been removed.
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Sullivan, apologies for not including a map. This is not near the Settlers Trail. Phase 5 is located on the northeast end of the development, just off of Royal Landing Gate, in behind the community park that's there. Phases 5A and B are mostly developed at this point, but it is Phase 5C, which still remains undeveloped, and we do not have an agreement for those lands. How Equinel, once they get draft plan approval, they build out their typically their phases into subphases. So we might have an agreement for 5A and B, but then they'll bring C online later, depending on some other factors. So this would allow for that last remaining phase of Phase 5 to still exist without losing their draft conditions as approved quite a few years ago.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And the last question I have is the capacity allocation. It looks like this has been given draft approval in 2020, and now they're looking for a one-year extension. So does that mean that capacity has been tied up or will be tied up for another year for these 173 units that then therefore is not available to any other developer at this time? Or should that capacity that they have been granted be released to someone else if they don't need to use it for at least a year?
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Sullivan. So the remaining phase is not 173 units. It's a much smaller component of that. Yes, they have granted capacity. I would have to go back and determine what that would be for the Phase 5C subphase as they applied for capacity as a whole for the entire development. Certainly we can get that information. But at this time, staff's recommendation is to extend draft plan approval, just given the significant amount of investment that has gone into Equinel to this date. And it's part of their phasing plan. They just need additional time to get to Phase 5C.
Okay, thank you for that. So if there is whatever capacity they have, if they don't need it for a year, is it possible to reallocate that capacity to someone else if we are in need of that?
Through Deputy Mayor to the Member Council, at this point in time, no. It's been granted as part of the draft plan approval process. We cannot revoke it unless we revoke the draft plan approval for Phase 5, which would affect the Phase 5C lands.
Okay, thanks for the explanation.
Did you have anything you wanted to add? No, okay. We've already had a mover and seconder for this. Are there any other questions regarding this item? Seeing none, okay. I'll call the question. Maybe I'll read the resolution again. The council recommends the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville to approve a one-year extension of Phase 5 of the Equinel subdivision draft plan conditions. Call the vote. All in favor? And that's passed. Thank you very much. Next, we're moving on to minutes of previous meetings. Are there any questions about the minutes from previous meetings? Councillor O'Sullivan? None? Okay, seeing none, I'll look for a mover and seconder to approve the minutes. Councillor Wilson, Councillor O'Sullivan, thank you very much. All in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. Moving on to reports. The first report we have tonight, I guess this is Deputy Chief Cale Rowan, is on awarding the request for quotations for heavy rescue refurbishment. So I'll turn it over to, yes. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a brief summary of the report you have in front of you. So as council is aware, in July, you approved the reallocation of capital funds previously approved for the mini rescue project in 2024. And this was to support the direction provided by staff in closed session regarding the heavy rescue apparatus procurement. Following that approval, staff submitted a bid for the 2001 E1 heavy rescue from Kentville Volunteer Fire Department in Nova Scotia. The bid was successful and the apparatus was delivered to the North Granville Fire Service in September of this year. In October, the department issued an RFQ, for the for the refurbishment of the apparatus. The scope of work includes full body corrosion repair, repainting to match the NGFS fleet, new municipal graphics and branding, LED scene and emergency lighting upgrades, a rear view camera, communication radio, and also servicing the onboard cascade and hydraulic generator systems. And this project also will include a complete mechanical and electrical inspection in accordance with NFPA and CSA standards. So 2 qualified bids were received. One was from Iron Trade Works and one was from Battle Shield Industries. Battle Shield's submission was approximately $2,000 lower. However, Iron Trade Works provided a more detailed and transparent proposal, including a full breakdown of parts, labor, subcontracted services, along with a significantly more comprehensive warranty package. Iron Trade Works also offered 2 lighting options. We choose the more economical option. The 2 bids would be within a few $100s of each other, although staff is recommending proceeding with the premium lighting package for the improved performance it provides. In addition, Iron Trade Works offered lifetime craftsmanship coverage on all fabrication and installation work, a 10-year paint warranty, and manufacturer-backed warranties on all lighting and electrical components. So based on the overall quality assurance, warranty coverage, and long-term value to the municipality, staff are recommending awarding the RFQ to Iron Trade Works. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. My question is about the heavy rescue truck that was brought up from Nova Scotia. The purchase of that was approved in this year's budget, is that correct? And the refurbishment will come from next year's budget?
That's correct, yes. It was reallocated from the 2024 mini rescue. So everything will be pushed to 2026 unless there is some cost for parts that are ordered. So for example, if they order lights and they come in, say in December, we would pay the vendor that money.
And that would be compensated by the budget allocation in 2026? Or where would that come from?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, it would. Okay. Any other questions from council? No. What was the original budget item in 2025? Does anyone recall for the purchase of that heavy truck? It came under budget or it was over budget and we had to reallocate some funds somewhere? Is that correct? Chief?
Deputy Mayor, the original allocation in 2024 was 285,000. We did purchase we were the successful bid with Kentville for the 2007 vehicle, which leaves us approximately $150,000 for the refurbishment that was left over from that original canceled vehicle back in 2024. So we're very close to that allotment, and that's why any additional will be covered under the 2026 budgetary deliberations or a 2026 budget.
So in fact, we won't need all that 154 because we've underspent this year.
We will utilize the 285,000 from the 2024 allotment, less the 135 that we did pay for the vehicle, and then we will have the majority of the value available for the refurbishment, but we don't anticipate the majority of the invoices until the 2026 budget, and so we will make sure to include those expenditures in the budget.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions besides mine? No? Okay, so I'll looking for someone to move that council approves the award of RFQ NGFS 2025-02 for the refurbishment of the 2007 E1 heavy rescue apparatus to Iron Trade Works, Inc. in the amount of $154,053.99, excluding applicable taxes, and that council authorizes the fire chief or designate to execute the necessary contract documents to proceed with a refurbishment project. Can I get someone? Yes. Okay, Councillor Wilson, and seconded by Councillor Strachian. Any further questions? I'll call a vote. All in favor? And that's passed. Great, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the fence bylaw update. And I understand, Ms. Martin, you're going to present that for us. Thank you.
That is correct, Deputy Mayor. We do have a brief presentation for council this evening. We go to the next slide. So staff are before council this evening with a recommendation that council endorse 3 minor amendments to our fence bylaw that helps enhance consistency and address oversights in the bylaw that were not caught when we previously amended the bylaw. Next slide, please. For council's recollection, the fence bylaw number 9924 came into effect on January 2nd in 2025. Back at the end of 2024, bylaw staff brought forward a variety of bylaws that we enforce and provide policy over to include the AMPS provisions, but as well as to do some tidying up of some of the language and any confusing enforcement pieces. 3 areas since that time have been identified for improvement within the fence bylaw. Next slide, please. So the first amendment is in regard to repealing section 8.4 of the bylaw. The section 8.4 allows for hedges to be considered as non-conforming fences. This provision has enabled property owners to bypass height and design restrictions. So it's staff's recommendation that we remove this section to provide clarity and neighborhood consistency. What we've run into in the past is where individuals have had a, say like a 10 or a 12-foot hedge, and they want to replace it with a fence. Our bylaw doesn't allow for a fence that high, and it becomes problematic in our urban area where we have certain restrictions over fence heights in the front yard for obvious visual reasons. So removing that provision takes away a bit of a loophole that some residents were using to try and get a higher fence where there had previously been a hedge. Next slide, please. The bylaw amendment also looks at updating the definition of urban area under section 1.2. The definition is only used in regards to section 3.2 of our bylaw, which speaks to restrictions within the front yard for fences, which as mentioned restricts it to 1 meter in height. Our current definition excludes certain developed residential areas, so this amendment is being proposed to update the definition to better align with the actual urban boundaries. The final amendment being proposed to the fence bylaw is to repeal section 2.2. It currently states that any fence which was in existence on the date of the passing of this bylaw shall be deemed to be in compliance with this bylaw. This removal clarifies that only fences compliant with the current bylaw are permitted, which closes a loophole that inadvertently was carried over from our 2004 bylaw. So it's important to note that any bylaw that was compliant as of the date when it was erected will still considered to be compliant. It's just to remove the fact that someone could say, well, you passed, I built a 20-foot fence yesterday and you passed this new bylaw, I'm compliant. It doesn't take away the rights that an individual who may have had a fence for 10 years that's been there to now all of a sudden have to come into compliance with our bylaw. So these changes are designed to improve clarity and understanding for both the public and municipal staff while ensuring greater consistency in the application and interpretation of policies. I'm happy to take any questions from council at this time in regards to our proposed updates to the fence bylaw. Thank you.
Okay, council colleagues, any questions? I have one. I'm a little unclear about the 2004 definition of urban area. How is that changed?
That's a great question, Deputy Mayor. I believe it excluded certain areas. Since 2004, our boundary looked much different than it does today. And I believe it just didn't capture a more recent plan as to what that urban area looked like. So our urban area back in 2004 wouldn't have necessarily included areas like Equinel. So we're looking to add in our definition of urban. How we define it is essentially our land use schedule in the official plan.
So the urban area is the urban service area as it's outlined currently?
I'd have to put the bylaw to review, but typically in the past, we've usually used the urban serviced area as that definition as to where what is considered urban. Since 2004, that has drastically changed. So we're looking just to update it to reflect our mapping that we have in the official plan, which defines our urban area, versus other language which would have restricted certain spaces that didn't exist in 2004 as it does now.
It leads me to wonder if the definition of urban area exists in other bylaws from that era, and whether that might cause some confusion going forward.
To you, Deputy Mayor, what I can say is that on the applicability of bylaws, when we look at definitions, it's the definition as in that bylaw as it is defined. So another bylaw may have a different understanding of what urban may be defined as. When we're applying the bylaw from like a bylaw enforcement perspective, we have to go by what is in that provision. So if the definition is different under another bylaw, you would apply that as it's read within that bylaw. We are actively working on that continual update and review to ensure consistency. And this was one of the ones that we had noted we had missed when in 2024. When bylaw stuff went through and did the review. So we're flagging it now. There will be more bylaws coming at the November 25th meeting. Again, incorporating some more of our AMPS provisions, but also providing some of that tidying up of language. I would say it'd be great and fantastic if we just had one common definition, but we have a lot of bylaws here at the municipality and sometimes they don't align, but from an enforcement perspective, we go by what's written in that bylaw.
I don't want to belabor the point, but if any bylaw refers to an urban area, do we not have a definition of the urban area that would accommodate any kind of changes going forward, like redrawing of the boundary, or is it married to the actual map that's appended to the bylaw? Sorry for these questions, but I'm just curious of why we got tripped up on that word or that definition.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. It's actually a fantastic question. So we do have some bylaws that we still enforce that are from early amalgamation days, where our definition of urban is much different than what it is in 2025. So certainly there could be an instance where we do have a bylaw that has a definition of urban that doesn't align with how we view urban today. Typically, when we refer to urban, we often look at our land use schedules in the official plan, which define what is considered urban versus rural, often tied to servicing. And that's been more recent that we default to that definition of urban. Another, great example could be like our development charges bylaw and looking at the service area and how they've defined certain areas. That's certainly changed over time as well as to what that urban area looks like. And there's more lands as we grow that will be added in. So we need to ensure that as our, settlement boundaries change in whichever manner, we need to be looking at all of our bylaws to ensure that either we have language that is flexible as to what we look for as that urban definition, or we're doing, ongoing review and update of our existing bylaws to ensure that we're catching them as they go. Ideally, having one definition that suits all and allows us to provide a bit of an update around would be great. But we'd have to look at how that impacts on a bylaw by bylaw basis.
Yeah, we have a lot of bylaws. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that explanation. So I guess have we had a mover and a seconder? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a brief point of clarification for Director Martin. I had made a note that in your background analysis, section 1.20 refers to section 3.2 of the bylaw. And it references the height of the front yard fence to 1 meter. And then further on, it mentions front yard fences up to 6.5 feet in height. And I know you mentioned consistency in the revised bylaw, so I'm just wanting to clarify that things will either be in meters or feet, not both, just for clarity.
Through Deputy Mayor, the bylaw does, I know that's in the report, but the bylaw does include both meters and feet. Usually it's meters bracket feet, but we will ensure that's more of a technical update that we can just make to the bylaw without having to bring it forward for an amendment, that we ensure we include both the metric and the imperial.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions regarding this? I'll be looking for a mover then and a seconder for the recommendation. I can read it now. That council adopts bylaw 85-25 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 99-24 being the fence bylaw. Looking for a mover. Councillor O'Sullivan, seconder. Oh, Councillor Stracher-Yan. Any further discussion? I'll call the question then. All in favor? Jumping the gun there. Okay. Next. This is again you, Director Martin. We're going to take a look at to award the Tourism Community Improvement Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I do have just a brief summary of our process and staff's recommendation to award. So as directed by council earlier this year, funds were allocated from the planning studies and reports budget line to look at procuring a company to undertake a tourism community improvement plan. This was one of our many recommendations within our tourism strategy. So staff issued a request for proposal in September of this year, and we received a very astounding 13 proposals, which was great to see. A lot of interest in companies wanting to work with North Grenville. Of the 13 proposals received, 7 qualified on their technical score to have their financials considered. Staff undertook 2 interviews with the top 2 firms, just given how the scoring, the closeness of the scoring. And we're satisfied that the highest scoring firm, which also provided the lowest bid of the qualifying firms to have their financial considered, should be awarded the request for proposal. What I can share is that the average price of the bids came in around just over $71,000. But looking at Vitality Planning, they came in at a price of $52,970, so about $20,000 less than what the average firm was bidding on. Staff are confident that the technical scoring and the interview really solidified the proposal that was provided by Vitality Planning, and are recommending to council that they award the proposal for the Tourism Community Improvement Plan creation to Vitality Planning. I'm happy to take any questions from council at this time. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor Barclay, to Director Martin. Can you refresh my memory? Did we put a timeline on this as to when we want it finished and what we're doing moving forward? Thanks.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Wilson. Through the request for proposal, staff identified about a 6-month timeline. There are statutory requirements under the Planning Act that need to be met, including some public consultation. And every firm included a very strategic public consultation process to work with our tourism industry and our community to look at how, what incentives would support our tourism community. To that end, we're looking at about a 6-month timeline, April at the latest May, for something coming forward for council's adoption. Staff will also be considering at that time, and as part of the budget process, if what an appropriate level of funding could be for a tourism community improvement plan to help fund those incentive programs once they are created. So to that end, it's about a 6-month process, looking at April, May for adoption.
Thank you.
Councillor O'Sullivan?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through you to Director Martin. Could you also refresh my memory? Did the RFP include any focuses on being a cycle-friendly community, destination area for cyclists, connectivity to the north, south, or west, and any of the sports that we have here, like disc golf, hockey, baseball, etc., becoming a part of the tourism improvement plan? And were there references for Vitality Planning? It's a new company, but to my knowledge, but you may know them from previous work.
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Sullivan, the RFP was not as specific as to identify specific aspects of tourism. It touched on a broad range of what we have in the community, building off the tourism strategy, and certainly the intent of the request for proposal and the consultation is to further pull out what those assets are. In regards to doing all the background checks, staff are confident that they check all the boxes of what we need and the work that those individuals have undertaken. They are a newer firm, but they've been around with other firms in the past. One of the principals used to work with MDB Insights and was part of our tourism strategy. So very familiar with the community, and we're able to demonstrate their extensive experience in creating community improvement plans, including working with areas like Elgin, Ontario, who have a very strong community improvement plan that has a lot of tourism elements in it. And that's something that when we were going through our review process, we wanted to ensure that whatever firm we chose, and we had a lot of great quality submissions. It was actually a very, very difficult position for staff because you wish you could work with everyone. But ensuring that they had that experience with community improvement plans and a strong tourism focus, which Vitality Planning did a fantastic job at laying out in the proposal in doing so. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Sounds good.
Somewhat related question. In the RFP, did we give any definition of tourism-related businesses, or will the consultant come back with their plan and articulate that a bit more? It seems rather, maybe we want it that way, have a very broad definition, or, yeah. So did we articulate what a tourism-related business would be, or did we have a list in our RFP?
Thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor. We were not that prescriptive in the request for proposal. We didn't want to limit the focus. Most of the proposals that were considered and reviewed have a component where they do a lot of analysis and defining what those uses are within our community, building off our tourism strategy, but also going through the consultation process, working to help identify who our tourism operators are in the area. There's a community survey, working with our advisory committees. They build that into the process as to how to define it. The goal wouldn't be to create, specific incentives that would be very limiting and would only allow certain aspects of the tourism industry to take advantage of or to apply for, but to create a document that we can use that is flexible in being able to support the tourism industry overall, whether it's an existing business or it's a new business looking to establish.
Yeah, the reason behind the question is that the eligibility requirements, like what businesses can apply for the grant, if it's a grant, or any other incentives that they come up with, could be tricky unless it's very sharply defined. So I'm hoping that the consultant would come back with either a draft application form with eligibility requirements really spelt out in detail, because I can see people saying it's a wonderful community. Who wouldn't want to be here and come and take a look at my house because it's beautiful, or my business because, even though it's not directly related to tourism, it's drawing people into the community.
Thank you for the comment, Deputy Mayor. Certainly that is something that is provided in their proposal. They will be providing us with the application forms, the matrix tools, the eligibility criteria, as well as the implementation and monitoring plan, building in KPIs, key performance indicators, to ensure that the program is functioning as it should, and that staff are able to provide those feedback mechanisms to council as to how the program is functioning. And a lot of that, part of that discussion is creating a program that has some flexibility, but does have a set of rules as to what is required to be eligible to receive the funding.
Great, thank you. So I'll be looking for someone, unless there's any other questions, to move this recommendation. I can read it. That council awards the Tourism Community Improvement Plan proposal to Vitality Planning in the amount of $52,970. I'm looking for a mover. Councillor Wilson, thanks. Someone to second it? Councillor O'Sullivan. Great. If there's no further questions, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. All right, now we're moving on to something I'm sure there will be questions. And that's the housing needs assessment for 2025. So once again, to you, we're working hard tonight, Director Martin. So
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I don't have a formal presentation. I do have speaking notes. You do have a copy of the housing needs assessment that was provided as part of the report. And I do have a copy here myself. So if there are more detailed questions, we can refer to specific areas of the report. To start off the presentation, I just want to thank CN Watson and their team, including Welch, who worked hard to put together our housing needs assessment. But this work really wouldn't have gotten to where it is without the direction of our Deputy Director, Phil Mosher, and our Housing Accelerator Funding Project Manager, Dr. Jackie Shoemaker-Holmes. They put a lot of time and effort and consideration into guiding the CN Watson team in the preparation of this document. The housing needs assessment was a requirement that needed to be fulfilled for the municipality to continue receiving our housing accelerator funding. So it's part of that overall funding package that we received and was funded through our housing accelerator fund. The housing needs assessment took a quantitative approach to reviewing housing data, as well as a qualitative approach, including interviews with the development community, municipal committees, community service providers, and staff at the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville, who are our housing service manager. They also interviewed a person with lived experience within the community. On the quantitative side, North Grenville's permanent housing base as of the 2021 census was approximately 7,035 occupied dwellings, with 88% of those being comprised of low-density units. Renter-occupied households account for approximately 12% of our housing stock. The housing needs assessment noted that there is a limited share of non-market housing in the municipality, which is about 1% of our total housing. And non-market housing within the assessment is defined as housing that is provided through a publicly funded program, such as the United Counties Rent Geared to Income units, or through nonprofit agencies. Think of community living. Over the past 10 years, North Grenville has averaged 180 new residential units per year. The cost of housing has increased at a significantly higher rate than income growth and inflation, eroding affordability in the community. There is a structural deficit in housing supply that has not kept up with the needs of the current population when we start to look at affordability. It is estimated that there are 150 households that have unmet demands within our community, and there are also 210 households that have been identified in severe core housing need, and this data was taken from the census. Over the next 25 years, it is anticipated that North Grenville will require an additional 4,310 new residential units. This represents a 61% increase in residential units. Long-term population growth is being driven by net migration into North Grenville, mostly intra-migration within the province of Ontario. And this is no surprise as we are next door to the city of Ottawa. The assessment identified that as the municipality's population grows, our average age continues to increase, and that this will create a new higher demand for higher density forms of housing. Over the next decade, the housing needs assessment identifies a need for 1,570 new dwelling units, broken down into 1,130 ownership units and 440 rental units. And based on this assessment, it is anticipated that 29%, about 460 units, of our forecasted housing growth in the next decade is expected to be affordable. This includes 230 ownership units and 230 rental units. As part of the assessment, an action and implementation plan was identified. There are a few things that the assessment noted. That includes that North Grenville, being a lower tier municipality, is not responsible, nor does it hold the mandate or direct funding to independently develop affordable housing projects. It notes that this is the responsibility of the United Counties, and therefore recommendations within the action and implementation plan reflects this dynamic. To accommodate the projected growth in North Grenville, we need to create 157 new residential dwelling units annually. This includes ensuring that 29% of new dwelling units be affordable over the next 10 years. Strong population growth in the 75-plus age group is anticipated to drive demand for medium and high-density housing, including seniors housing and affordable housing options. Housing will need to support the aging population by providing a full range of options ranging from independent living to assisted living, as well as full-time care. The housing needs assessment noted that there is a lack of rental housing and noted that the municipality needs to expand our housing market choice and options. In order to achieve meeting these housing needs of our current and future residents, the assessment recommended the following: that we update our definitions of affordable to reflect the provincial planning statement and reflect affordable housing targets for the municipality to align with our affordable housing needs. To plan for a balance of growth by focusing residential development within settlement areas and promoting a range of infill and intensification opportunities where servicing is available. This includes promoting missing middle housing, high-density development, and additional residential units. The municipality should also take an effort to align our additional residential unit incentives to layer with United Counties' incentive programs. The municipality should develop a monitoring framework with quantitative and qualitative indicators to track outcomes of our official plan and housing-related policies. We should also undertake a seniors housing study to identify housing needs, gaps, and opportunities to accommodate a growing older population and address a lack of affordable housing for seniors. To diversify the housing base, the municipality is encouraged to work with home builders to expand the supply of more moderately priced ownership and rental housing options. The housing needs assessment identified that our official plan is the avenue to help develop policies that encourage and support the development of a broader range of housing options. A review of local zoning and land-related barriers is also encouraged, including the promotion of modular and tiny home construction where it is appropriate. Looking at alternative development standards for affordable housing should be considered to reduce development costs, which could include a reduction of parking requirements, innovative construction methods, and allowing for small units and lots, provided they meet the Ontario Building Code and health and safety standards. To support non-market housing, the assessment identifies that the municipality should streamline the development process, including flexibility on study requirements and support for municipal fee waivers, identify options to expand affordable housing and supportive housing models, including a site location and strategic partners for development, a review of municipally owned lands that could be used for affordable housing, and complementing federal and provincial and school board sites in the process. It encourages us to work with United Counties to support new non-market housing initiatives and to review the CMHC design catalog and explore the possibility of pre-approving those building plans and adopting required zoning changes. The housing needs assessment also recommends consideration of financial tools. This includes our review of designated land supply, focusing on residential development in the urban settlement area, promotion of infill and intensification, and promotion of development of additional residential units. Project feasibility through flexibility in development approvals, such as expedited processing, development permissions, parking requirements, and design considerations. Reducing upfront financial obligations and reducing operational costs moving forward. Expanding our downtown community improvement plan with a stronger focus on housing, and also through a community improvement plan, provide grants allowing for combined incentives or establishing funding streams for medium and high density infill projects. Lastly, as a tool that the municipality could use, the assessment also recommended exploring the use of a community planning permit system. That concludes my presentation on what is a very detailed report. I tried to do the report justice as much as I could. Understanding there's a lot of data to unpack, I will turn it back over to council if they have questions. I'll do my best to answer on the fly, but if there's some things that council would like staff to delve into a little more deeper, we can always come back with a supplemental report providing additional information. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Martin. I note that we're receiving this for information purposes, but the fact that it's coming to us tonight gives us an opportunity to weigh in on some of the elements, and it's very, I wouldn't say complicated, but it's full of information. I'll turn it over to my councillor colleagues for questions. I have a few. Councillor Strakian.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Director Martin. Thank you very much for summarizing that very lengthy report. I know there's a lot more in here, but I think you did it justice. One of the points that you raised, though, does stand out, and I just wonder if you could provide some examples of the types of studies that are required for site plan that we could consider for reduction. Like, what are the kinds of studies that are included right now? Which ones do you think would be we could be more flexible on as per the recommendations?
Thank you for the question through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Strackerian. Staff would want to go back and look at what our requirements are. There are certain things on the civil side that we cannot forego, and same thing on on the environmental and heritage or archaeological side, depending if you fall within a policy area. I know the province in recent years has kind of pushed to move away from imposing stricter design guidelines and and heritage requirements where where they're not established. What we could do is look at the full breadth of policies and studies that we could ask for and identify are there existing studies that the municipality has undertaken that that might not negate but reduce the requirements of what would have to be looked at. It is hard to get away from some of those technical studies in the sense of traffic, how you're going to service it. But we can certainly look for on the planning side. Are there, some studies that we have information on that we wouldn't necessarily require them to duplicate? There's certain things, like I said, like you can't get away from on the technical side, but we could look at what is truly needed. What are we most concerned about being stormwater runoff, and how the site's being serviced. Versus some of those other impacts, which, design guidelines or some design considerations, more so in our official plan that we would ask an applicant to look at as part of a planning submission.
I may continue with you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I think the comment that's in here that North Grenville's requirements are more onerous than in other communities doesn't necessarily mean that we're wrong in asking for them. There could be a greater level of due diligence on our part for whatever reason. So it would be good to know, what those look like. And the duplication, I understand that seems like a good area to cut some extras, but maybe not in other areas. So look forward to hearing more about that as we go. One other comment that I have, this is referring to our 2018 official plan, and we're very hopefully close to finalizing our more current official plan. I'd hope that if there are any differences between those two, that it would be reflected back on this current assessment that we have right now, and that it would be refreshed if there were significant differences.
Perfect. Just to respond, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Strackerian, absolutely. The comments provided through the housing needs assessment have already been provided to our consultant working on our official plan update. And some of those recommendations around affordability definitions and affordable housing targets will be a consideration as part of that update. We're looking to do perfect timing to consolidate those within that process.
Councillor O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through you to Director Martin. When I was reviewing the agenda, I did see a note that it referred to 29% of new units per year needed to be deeply affordable. And unfortunately, I can't find that terminology in the documents I'm looking at right now. But that comes down to 45 and a half or 45 units per year. How many units of new development this year in 2025 were deemed to be affordable? We're struggling to get to 20. We're struggling to get to 15% of affordable home units in new builds. It's going to be quite a challenge to get to 29%. So kudos to you, and if we can manage to get a plan to achieve this. So, and I also wanted to thank you and Deputy Director Mosher and Dr. Schumacher-Holmes along with Watson for this comprehensive report, because it's pretty telling, and it soundly says this is what we need over the next 10 years. And hopefully that will be a good tool to encourage developers to find a way to come up with our goal of 25% affordable units.
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Sullivan, I don't have the numbers on how many units this year would meet our definition of affordable. That wasn't specifically defined in the report. What the assessment did note is that over the next 10 years, it anticipates that 29% of all new units will be affordable. We do inherently recognize that when it comes to development, that some projects may fall short of our 25% standard, but we'll also have projects come online that will 100% meet our affordable definition. One of the projects that comes to mind is our Bell Hall project, which when that permit's issued will account for 60 units in that year that will be considered affordable. So in certain years, you might see those numbers be driven up where we well exceed the 29. It could be greater depending on the number of permits you receive. But it will fluctuate on a year-to-year basis based on what comes through. And hopefully, we see, with more development coming online and through some of the draft conditions coming before council for subdivisions and through on the zoning side, working with developers, especially on the purpose-built rentals, that primary rental market where there is a demand for more affordable units, working with developers to secure some level of affordability there will help to continue to drive that number. So it's not a perfect system in that sense, but like we do have projects that will come in at 100% affordable versus say maybe 10 or 15%. But what I do want to note is that, we did provide our, what's in draft approval, what has been agreed to in developments coming forward. So some of that data being taken from what has already been committed by developers is included within that analysis.
Okay, thank you.
I think in the past, we've been hung up with individual applications for development and haven't really had the opportunity to reflect on the aggregate number. And you mentioned Bell Hall. Of the 60 units, 20 or 21 are deeply affordable because they're rent geared to income. Is that not correct?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, that is correct. 20 of the units have been committed by the counties to be provided that kind of deeply affordable RGI subsidy, rent geared to income subsidy, to help offset the cost to those residents who truly need that lower amount of rent.
Great. Any other questions? I have a few. I note that this housing needs assessment is a requirement for funding, for the half funding. And I think your department's done a great job in terms of meeting some of the requirements for that funding. And certainly this is one of them. But it's suggested that we renew it or review it every 5 years. And given the rate of growth, I think that's 5 years is a lifetime. So I would hope that we'd take a look at it every 2 years, if not sooner. Is that something that, we have the capacity to do?
Thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor. From a capacity perspective, this would be something we would go to RFP for and have somebody update. So the capacity would be included as part of the budget deliberations on kind of that annual cycle basis. Typically, every 5 years allows you to get that next census data update. And I think it's that 5-year cycle with the census data makes sense. Then you're getting more relevant information when that becomes available. If you were to go out in, say, another 2 years, if that census data is not available, they're going to be using the 2021 data. So sometimes it's that 5-year cycle just allows for new data to become available through other processes to help with that further analysis.
Yeah, I understand the need to have current census data, but we also track our housing builds, and we have certain targets that we're trying to hit in terms of affordability, like 29%. So I think to wait 5 years and rely on census data, and I know we can drill down and get the census data for North Grenville, we can get that, but we are also tracking quite regularly our builds, et cetera. So it's just a suggestion. The other question I had was, it mentions we continue to work with home builders to achieve our aims. What kind of things are we doing in terms of working with home builders currently? And does this, this housing needs assessment, does it indicate any other ways in which we can work with home builders to try and achieve our goals other than setting targets?
Thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor. What I do want to say, just to your previous comment, is that one of the recommendations is a monitoring program to provide that continual feedback to council as to how we are achieving not just our housing goals as to, as outlined here in the housing needs assessment, but as well within the official plan. In regards to working with our development community, I think we're always in conversation as to what are some of those barriers that we might come across in regards to, to the development process. Certainly, we do hear from time to time that, the process can get bogged down. So we're always looking at where can we find those efficiencies. The other thing with working with the development community is, kind of identifying, where our housing needs are, encouraging, diverse housing. We provide a lot of feedback through the development review team process, but it's on the affordable housing side as to those conversations of providing affordability within projects, especially the purpose-built rentals, where we can have more of an effect. The other aspect of it is working with our new subdivisions coming online to provide greater housing options, and that includes having houses pre-designed with additional residential units. I know we've had a lot of discussion as to whether an additional residential unit is considered affordable, but it provides an alternative, an additional housing unit within the community that could help offset someone's rent or provide a place for their parent to live. So we're always in dialogue with those types of communications as to how can we improve the overall affordability in the community in new builds, but as well as looking for how can we better improve our processes, identifying. That's sometimes our whole point of a zoning housekeeping amendment is identifying some of those barriers that we keep coming up against. So where we see that, working to develop standards that better reflect what the development community is seeing. So we do appreciate the relationship that we do have especially through our development review team, which has been very effective at the consultation stage to raise some of the issues that we're seeing over and over again that then give us a chance to go back and improve upon.
Great. And just along those lines, I'm gratified to see in the detailed report the suggestion that we expand the downtown Kemptville Community Improvement Plan to focus more on housing incentives. So that might be one tool that when we talk about working with home builders and developers to flesh out that community improvement plan to provide incentives for certain types of housing mix and affordable housing. I think that's great. Now, my other question or other thing I noted is the following page in 74 talks about a community planning permit system. And we've gone back and forth talking about a secondary plan, OP for downtown. Now it seems like we're pointing towards a community permit planning system, which is a great initiative to streamline the process and get things happening. So how do we reconcile those two things? We've got funding for a secondary plan downtown, but we're also looking at this housing needs assessment suggesting we have a community permit planning system in place. Are they compatible, or does one replace the other?
Thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor. They're two very different mechanisms from a planning perspective. The downtown secondary plan complements the official plan in providing more specific policies to the downtown area itself and how we envision that downtown area growing and the look and feel that we want to create there. A community planning permit system is basically, it's another tool. So right now we have a zoning bylaw that regulates land use. It's another tool in which we can regulate land use, but it pulls in the site plan process, the zoning process, and the minor variance process into one as an approval system. So certainly that's, if there's consideration from the council table to see that move forward, that would be something that we would have to take outside of the staff and hire a firm to help us put a community planning permit system in place. The recommendation is municipal wide versus a specific area. You can do it for a small subset area, or you can do it municipal wide. But it is no small feat. It's basically replacing your entire zoning bylaw. So we would have to look for some budget considerations in the future and the timeline around that. I would encourage perhaps maybe we wait till our official plans wrapped up before moving to a new system so we can ensure we've captured all of those changes. But we will be looking to ensure that in our official plan update, we have strong language that's very supportive of a community planning permit system, should that be the desire of council in the future to move in that direction.
Thank you for that explanation. So in the past, I've understood a community permit planning system to be sort of localized and be used in a, say, a downtown revitalization. It's interesting to note that this housing needs assessment talks about a municipal-wide community permit planning system, which makes sense as well. So thanks. Thanks for that clarification. That is all my questions. Again, lots of support for the Downtown Kemptville Community Improvement Plan addressing housing needs, because I think that's where we can see the most compact kind of development with infills, et cetera. And I'm a big supporter of that. So thank you. Thank you very much for all that work that went into getting this housing needs assessment forward and for the work that you're doing continually. Any further questions on this one item? I'll be looking for a mover and a seconder, therefore, that the recommendation, to support the recommendation that council receive the updated housing needs assessment for the municipality of North Granville for information purposes. Can I get a mover for that? Councillor O'Sullivan, seconded by Councillor Stracher-Yan. Any final discussion on the item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. Now, unless I see anyone desperate for a break, we'll continue with item J, which is interesting. A development here. We've got correspondence. There's many items included in the agenda for information. The question is, would any member of council like to pull an item for discussion at the next meeting? I understand that would be done in the format of a notice of motion for next meeting. Is that correct? Madam Clerk? How do we go about this?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. If council would like to pull an item, a resolution for support, we would put it on the next agenda under notice of motions for you to discuss and provide your support if that is the direction.
And tonight is the night that we'd highlight those items for the next meeting. Okay. All right, so I'll look to council colleagues. There is a very long list of correspondence. I can't claim to have read every letter, but the ones that interest me are letters that advocate and support elect respect, but I don't have any information on elect respect. I didn't get a chance to check it out, but it looks interesting. Anybody? Give you everyone a moment to go through that. Okay. Nothing? Okay, well, I guess there's nothing. No, I'm curious. I'm going to have to find out more about it. We might bring our own elect respect letter. Go ahead.
Deputy Mayor, to the clerk, if we request to have that particular item remove, the elect respect one, we're committing it to discussion at the next meeting. Is that correct?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to you, Councillor Stracher-Yan. Correct. We would craft the notice in support of what has been included and drafted by our municipal colleagues, and then it would be for discussion and consideration at that meeting.
The quick review I have done of those ones, they're not all the same.
Okay.
So there's a variety in there. So I'm just wondering how we would get to what we would like to see. If you would propose one and then we could discuss it, or how we would get there, because I don't know that they're all different, but I know that there's at least a few that are different.
Moving forward would be my recommendation that if there was one that you would like to pull, you identify which municipalities specifically. If not, we can pull the item and I can follow up with the deputy mayor offline about which one would be the preference to be brought forward.
Yeah, there was one that was pretty straightforward, in my view, not a lot of whereases. And I don't know whether it was the first one or the last one, to tell you the truth. So, if people want a break, I could probably identify it pretty quickly during a break.
If I could, Deputy Mayor, I would be supportive of that removing that one. I agree with you, to see that one come off for discussion at the next meeting. Whichever one you're choosing, I'm good with that. The idea behind it is I'm supportive of that as well. Thank you.
Okay. I'll ask the clerk about how we take a break. And I'm going to suggest 5 minutes. I could probably do it in 5 minutes. Okay, so I'm looking for a mover and a seconder to take a 5-minute break to come, or do we need longer? Nope. Okay, 5 minutes. So moved by Councillor O'Sullivan, seconded by Councillor Stracher. So we'll come back at 7:45. I know that's 6 minutes, but thank you. We'll take a break. Okay, thank you, everybody. We're back from the break. We sorted that out. So what we've decided to do is pull the elect respect correspondence to come back at the next meeting with a notice of motion regarding a draft resolution that encapsulates that covers the, I can't say encapsulate tonight. Oh, I just did. You know, the elements of those letters in a more digestible format, at least if I can offer that opinion. Okay, so after J, we're moving on then to K, notice of motions. And we have an interesting circumstance here in that my notice of motion, I can't move. So should I read the notice of motion first before I ask for a mover? Why don't I do that since I don't have much more role to play? Whereas the safety and accessibility of roads within the municipality of North Grenville are of paramount importance to its residents and visitors, and whereas the road infrastructure on Van Buren Street, County Road 24, between Prescott and the rail trail lacks adequate pedestrian infrastructure, posing risks to pedestrian safety and hindering the municipality's goal of promoting active transportation. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of North Grenville requests that the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville approve the establishment of a sidewalk on the south side of Van Buren Street, County Road 24, between Prescott and the rail trail to enhance safety, accessibility, and economic development opportunities. And be it further resolved that a copy of this motion be forwarded to the United Counties Council and relevant staff, requesting their immediate consideration of this matter. And be it finally resolved that the municipality of North Grenville commits to the design of the sidewalk as soon as approval is secured from the counties. So I'll be looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Stracher-Yan, seconded by Councillor O'Sullivan. Correct. So it's on the table and looking for discussion on this motion. Councillor Stracher, no, I get to decide, Doreen. Yes. Councillor Stracher-Yan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. To Director Martin, I think, I agree that sidewalks are definitely needed, and especially along that stretch. I'm just wondering how much in feet or meters, whichever you prefer, is required to bring in the sidewalk? Because I know there's already a bit of a path in some areas along Van Buren there. Is the sidewalk comparable to that size or slightly larger than what's already there?
Through your Deputy Mayor to Councillor Stracher, I'm going to have CAO Dunlop answer
Fair
that
enough.
question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The length of the sidewalk roughly from Van Buren to the rail trail that would be required is 500 meters. What you see along the southern portions of Van Buren on parts of those sections is what is basically a paved shoulder for snowbank and curb support. Should the counties agree and a design go ahead, the intent would be to make sure that then any sidewalk or MUP or whatever pedestrian methodology that we would install would be a meter behind the curb. So what is there would not be what I would anticipate we would recreate, for the fact that we know that the county who plows the road and the municipality who plows pedestrian systems would be in conflict in regards to the snowbank. So we make sure that we try to have a meter to a meter and a half separation. So anything that you see there, which is only a meter in width max, would actually be behind that. We'd also have to make sure that any conflicts with hydro poles is also considered. So we may have a slight undulation within the sidewalk.
Thank you, CAO, through you, Deputy Mayor. So it's the existing space that's there that's for snow clearance, plus the width of the sidewalk. So the property owners right now, that would be within the road allowance typically, that would already be for each of those property owners. They would be, I'll say losing, they'd be gaining the sidewalk, but losing some of their grass area or garden area perhaps, but it's within the road allowance. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair. That would be my assumption until we had a legal survey completed. It is my understanding that we do have a full 66 feet there, although with no on-street parking. So there should be adequate width within an existing road allowance to accommodate. The only challenge that I would see would be accommodating where the hydro poles are and where the recently installed fiber boxes. So we would have to take that into consideration for any formalized designs and squeezing of those pedestrian facilities.
Councillor O'Sullivan?
Thank you very much, and thank you, Deputy Mayor, for putting this notice of motion forward. It's very similar to a notice of motion C 2024-424, which was carried by council on December 17th of 2024, that there would be a MUP or a sidewalk established on the south side of Van Buren between County Road 19 and Prescott Street. So I would like, at that time, it was that would be done concurrently with any new development along Van Buren. So I would like to, perhaps if you're agreeable or the mover is agreeable, to add a friendly amendment to this, maybe, I guess it's friendly, that the extension go from Prescott Street to Rainaway. And that would then serve the people who live in the condo apartment along there. Because right now, anybody who lives in that condo apartment, and I've had two people, one woman that I know from curling, who lives in there and says that there's no way that she can safely, this was prior to the four-way stop at Rainaway, but in order to get to the intersection, there's no sidewalk to walk along, and or to get to the crosswalk, PXO, which is at the rail trail. I realize that there is a challenge with the bridge over the culvert at Barnes Creek, and I'm wondering if perhaps it could be explored how that challenge could be met, and maybe something like what was done on Heard Street could be done with bollards along over the bridge to accommodate pedestrians.
Okay, before I ask the mover whether that's a friendly amendment, I'll go to the CAO. Maybe she can provide some comment on the existing motion, why it stops at the rail trail.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I would say that the word challenge is close to what we would find in that specific application. I think that having the county doing the accepting the idea of the pedestrian connectivity along the southern side of Van Buren, with that challenge being the crossing of Barnes Creek. It is a large culvert. I would think that the average daily count, I was going to use the acronym, the average daily count on Van Buren versus Heard Street are very different. So I would think that would create an additional burden that we may not be able to overcome in a similar methodology to Heard Street, but I think it would be appropriate to include either as an amendment to the original or as a separate consideration that we consider Prescott Street to the rail trail, and then the rail trail to County Road 19, including the options as well as some costings for crossing that challenge being Barnes Creek and what it would look like. At the rail trail, there is a PXO. The rail trail is not winter maintained. There is the new stop and crossing at Rainaway, which is bridge at the Van Buren. So taking into consideration the pedestrian movements, getting from one side to the other, which I think is one of the primary criteria here, can be considered as part of that design, but I wouldn't specifically want to dictate what that design was until we looked at the options, the costings, and of course, get the county's blessing.
Thank you. I'd also like to say that recognizing that people, pedestrians, like to travel the shortest distance, but the safest way to get over Barnes Creek is to follow the rail trail, because it does cross Barnes Creek and it takes you all the way to Bridge Street. Now, it may not be the ideal option for people at Rainer Way to walk down Bridge, hit the rail trail, and then take the rail trail to Van Buren, but that might be the most cost-effective way to get people over Barnes Creek as far as Bridge Street. But it's not up to me. I didn't move, so I think you might have, ooh, interesting. Somebody's left the meeting. So I'll look to the clerk about your friendly amendment. Maybe you want to revise that friendly amendment, and I'll put it to the mover, whether that's accepted as a friendly amendment. Well, we'll have to hear from Councillor O'Sullivan, because she's trying to amend the resolution as written and moved by Councillor Stracher-Yan. So maybe you'd want to clarify your suggested amendment?
Yeah, I don't know how to put it into words, but perhaps into succinct words. If your original motion is to go from Prescott Street to the rail trail where there is a PXO, that's wonderful. And then to serve the residents who live on the south side of Van Buren between Barnes Creek and Raina Way, if there could be a continuation on that side of the culvert to get to the four-way stop where there is a safe option to cross the road. So just interrupt it at Barnes Creek and then continue on the other side of Barnes Creek, of the culvert, so that there's a safe connection then to the four-way stop.
Ms. Dunlop?
If I may, Mr.
Yep.
Chair, going back to the original premise, and as a third consideration, that options for connecting over Barnes Creek, these two potential pedestrian pathways to be considered as and being cost dependent and of course council approved in the long term. So we have almost like a three-step process. The first being Van Buren from Prescott to the rail trail. The second being Barnes Creek to Raina Way. And then the third being the component of crossing Barnes Creek on the south side of Van Buren for options to be investigated.
Okay, Councillor Stracher-Yan, have you been following this? And would you consider, I guess, the way it would, if I might, the way to change this original motion would be anytime the phrase the rail trail, we would add to the rail trail as phase one, and from Barnes Creek to Bridge Street as phase two, and crossing Barnes Creek as phase three.
Through you, Madam, Mr. Deputy Mayor, sorry, Madam Mayor is where I was going. Apologies. Yes, I was following that A, B, and C as the options, but to be considered separately in order to connect them all. So I wouldn't want A to be hung up because B or C is too difficult, but to have each of those considered separately with the intent of connecting all three.
Okay.
So I
So we're in
I
agreement.
agree.
We're just struggling with how
Exactly.
to craft this motion to accommodate that. And My understanding is that the time is of the essence because we want to get the counties to weigh in so that we can approve in the 2026 budget the design of this sidewalk. Is that correct? But we don't know how long it's going to take counties. So, I mean, one option is to defer this so that we can come back with a, no? Okay. Can we, all right.
So.
It's up to you.
You, Deputy Mayor, I don't think we need to defer it. I think because the essence of what was originally presented is still here. Simply adding those other two for additional consideration would allow for that. Now, it may take longer because of the Barnes Creek crossing piece, which would require a more in-depth investigation, I think, for options. So perhaps the whole process would be too long. If we wanted to prioritize getting from Prescott to the rail trail, then leaving it as is would get us likely to that portion quicker, and then come back with perhaps subsequent motions for the other portions could allow us to have those considered separately. I don't know if that's a smart approach to it, because in the end, we want all three to come together, but it might be the most efficient to get one part taken care of ahead of the others.
So the suggestion on the table from the mover is, as I understand it, to come back with parts 2 and 3 at a later date, but get this out the door as far as the rail trail goes, as is.
Yes, to you, Deputy Mayor, I think the more complicated we make this, the longer it'll take to get a response back. So while I agree with what was proposed as a friendly amendment by Councillor Sullivan, I'm not sure that it would be the most efficient way to get anything going, because they'd have to consider 3 very complex pieces. 1 very complex, 2 less complex, I guess, but they would have to put more time and effort into it. So I think it comes down to what council is looking for as priorities.
Yeah, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I can't move it. So you'd have to accept the amendment or not, and we'd have to wordsmith it. Councillor O'Sullivan, it's your suggested amendment.
Thank you. So if I may, I would suggest that we do 1 and 2 together so that they're design and build the pedestrian connection, MUP, sidewalk, whatever they can come up with, from Prescott to Rainaway, excluding crossing Barnes Creek, because it's just going to be the same kind of sidewalk on both sides of the creek. And then because people who are coming from the west side can cross the crosswalk at the rail trail, and people who live in the condos, or I think there's another property besides the condo building on that side, they can then safely get to the 4-way stop at Rainaway and cross there.
Councillor Strakian?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Not to make this more complicated than it needs to be, but perhaps the CAO can weigh in on her experience with dealing with these kinds of changes, adding in crosswalks. Is the county's likely to consider adding in a sidewalk that gets you all the way to a bridge, and then on the other side of it without including a portion to cover the bridge as a crossing, because you kind of set people up to walk there and then say, now you're at a dead end, turn around? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this is a worthwhile endeavor, if it's likely that they would say, well, we can't do this unless we consider the crossing over the bridge. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
My interpretation of what you just asked is if we create a sidewalk to a dead end, which then forces those pedestrians onto a roadway that is narrowed roadway because there's a guardrail that goes over a creek, are they less likely to approve it? I think that would be logical that yes, they would. They may, again, take it in a further phased approach that it's Prescott to rail trail to, I think the phasing is something that maybe should be considered and that staff report back. So let's going back to phase 1, being Prescott to the rail trail, and then consideration and discussions with the county on the balance, and to bring back options to council as part of the report when we have those discussions with the county from Prescott to the rail trail. Maybe, unfortunately, the undoing of some of this, the wording, but maybe the best option for at least some movement forward.
Okay, it's not a dead end, though, if there is an option to cross the road. I mean, it's no crazier than the position of the crosswalk on Bridge Street, where you come down and then you have to cross the road, then cross the road, and then cross back to the road. Like you have to cross Wellington Road, then cross the crosswalk on Bridge Street, and then cross on Parkinson Road, instead of continuing straight down Wellington Road onto Parkinson. You have to zigzag 2 crosswalks. So anyway, I just don't want to see it hung up, and I agree with Councillor Stracher-Yan. I think keeping it simple so that it can proceed is important, but I have had people who live in the condo apartments reach out to me and say, you know, there's no safe way for me to walk to that crosswalk or walk to now the 4-way stop, and have asked for sidewalk on that side. So for the record, I think it should go all the way to Rainaway. But getting it at least to the rail trail is a good first step. So maybe if we can have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 in this motion, and have the priority to be phase 1 at this point in time, if that would allow it to go forward. Not sure.
Yeah. The other thing you might consider as a friendly amendment is just having it from asking the counties to approve a sidewalk on the south side from Prescott all the way to Rainaway. If we are taking on the obligation of design, then when we start in 2026 designing it, we can grapple with these challenges. Does that make sense? I'll ask the CAO. If we're responsible for the design, then we come up with how to execute this motion from Prescott to Rainaway. And, you know, the designers will have to grapple with those challenges.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. Yes, I think that should the county approve the conceptual installation of a sidewalk on the south side of Van Buren, they will give us the design criteria, the offsets, the how far back, how wide everything can be, and we would accommodate those requirements based on the design challenges. Exactly as you said, over the bridge, over the creek, the backside of the road allowance, dancing around hydro poles, all those things would have to be taken into consideration based on the design criteria that the county would set. Maybe they say they would allow something on the roadside of the guardrail, or they'll say, I'm sorry, but you must put something behind the guardrail. So those are the considerations as part of the discussions from a staff level that we can make sure that we bring back before we go to any conceptual design RFQs.
So I'd suggest, Councillor O'Sullivan, that we keep it simple. I'll hear from Councillor Stracher-Yan after you weigh in, and we just modify it to say between Prescott and Rainaway, and then have all those challenges dealt with at the design phase. Councillor Stracher-Yan, sorry.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And so that would allow us, once we be given the permission and the allowances and so on from Prescott all the way up to Rainaway from the counties, it would allow us to choose whether or not we do it as a phased-in approach or not. So I think that that gets us to where we were headed one way or the other. So I think that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Are you in agreement with that revised friendly amendment, Councillor O'Sullivan?
Yes, I am. Thank
Okay.
you.
And so I assume, Councillor Strachan, you accept, you agree indirectly with yourself. Okay, how about I read the amended motion, just for the record? Whereas the safety and accessibility of roads within the municipality of North Grenville are of paramount importance to its residents and visitors, and whereas the road infrastructure on Van Buren Street, County Road 24, between Prescott and Raina Way lacks adequate pedestrian infrastructure, posing risks to pedestrian safety and hindering the municipality's goal of promoting active transportation. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of North Grenville requests that the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville approve the establishment of a sidewalk on the south side of Van Buren Street, County Road 24, between Prescott and Raina Way to enhance safety, accessibility, and economic development opportunities. And be it further resolved that a copy of this motion be forwarded to the United Counties Council and relevant staff requesting their immediate consideration of this matter, and be it finally resolved that the municipality of North Grenville commits to the design of this sidewalk as soon as approval is secured from the counties. So that's been moved by Councillor Strachan and seconded by, I lost track, Councillor O'Sullivan. Yes, okay. Shall I call the vote? All in favor? Great. Oh, we went all around the mulberry bush on that one, but I think we landed on something that's workable. So thank you very much. Next, notice of motions for consideration at a future meeting of council. Are there any? No? No notice. So we've given ourselves a break. There are no petitions or written communications from the public. No unfinished business. And N, questions from the media and public. Have we received anything by email? No. Okay. Now I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for a motion to move into a closed session. Can I get someone to move, or should I articulate why we're going in? Should I read the motion? Yes, I shall. That Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of North Grenville move into a closed session at 8:12 p.m. at the North Grenville Municipal Office in accordance with Section 239(2)H of the Municipal Act 2001 to consider the following. Bell Hall, Section 239(2)H, information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board by Canada, a province or territory or Crown agency or any of them. So I'm looking for someone to move that. Councillor Wilson, thank you. And seconded, Councillor O'Sullivan. So now I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that's passed. We are now in closed. Yep. Yeah, no, we're not.
Test, test, test.
Okay, so now I look for a mover and a seconder for a motion to reconvene the open session. That council reconvenes in open session at 8:32. Could somebody move that? Councillor Wilson, thank you. Seconded by Councillor O'Sullivan. And any discussion? All in favor? Great, we're back in business. Now I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for a motion that the business arising from closed, which is that council direct staff to proceed as directed, is moved. Can somebody move that? Councillor O'Sullivan, seconded by Councillor Wilson. And the motion is that council direct staff to proceed as directed. All in favor? All in favor? Thank you. All right. We're on to confirmation bylaw. We're getting close to the end. I need a mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw. Moved by Councillor O'Sullivan, seconded by Councillor Strachian, that the confirmation bylaw as attached to this agenda be read a first, second, and third time. Well, this is new, and finally passed in open council. Can I call a vote? All in favor? Great. Onwards to adjournment. I need a mover and a seconder to adjourn. Councillor Wilson, very enthusiastically. Seconded by Councillor Strachian. There's no debate on this, that we now adjourn at 8:33 to meet again at the call of the mayor. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you very much.